tê-los aqui.
Rodrigo, só mais minutinho, tá? 5
O último
segundos.
dia da
Good
semana.
morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to have you here on the last day of the International Week on Tropical Agriculture with a tribute to Alison Paulinelli. And we today are talking about the challenges of tropical agriculture, how we can improve productive systems and achieve certain sustainable development goals. Today, so the topic today is innovation and the future of world food, a pathway to sustainability. We have speakers who are knowledgeable in areas of relevance so that we can feed millions of people. This is a goal that has been set by the United Nations for 2050 for various regions of the world. And it is obvious that food security will continue to be a challenge for the world.
Só que a gente não pode olhar só
fundamental role to play in the fulfillment of these goals, not just the capacity to produce food, but that we should have surpluses of food, but without technical assistance, this won't be possible. But we need technology. We have to look at how innovation can help us to reach the objective of global food security, generate jobs and business. So there are many actions geared at sustainable agriculture. The challenge, overcoming the challenge of realizing these SDGs, particularly with regard to SDG 12. And in this discussion, we will be talking about how we can work, knowing that there's need to work on a diversification, technology, knowledge, credit, technical assistance, especially for small and medium-sized producers who suffer most and who need to make changes in an efficient way to the productive chains. In view of this context, I'm going to give you an example that we have done in Brazil with regard to one of the topics that will be dealt with today, where we will hear about low carbon agriculture. And efficient and sustainable production. The Ministry of Agriculture in Brazil is reviewing the low carbon agriculture to enter into a new phase from 2021 to 2030. And there will be a discussion on technology based on the premise that we need to have investment in technology and the promotion of good practices so that we may have a more resilient system. I believe that innovation is central to our agenda, and we have a panel that will be speaking about innovation and the future of world food, a pathway to sustainability. in the company where I am a partner and where we carry out research for different actors in the productive chain, we realize that innovation is absolutely essential for us to be successful in the market. And so our panel will be speaking to this. These are persons who work in the area. I'm Rodrigo Lima, and I will be the moderator of the panel. And I would like to invite Professor from USPIC. I will introduce him briefly before he speaks. He is an agronomist with a master's in administration from the University of Sao Paulo. He has experience in administration with a focus on strategy and marketing, applied marketing to agribusiness and foods, and in strategic management networks and so on. And he's a titular professor in the Secretariat of Administration of the University of Sao Paulo and the Getulio Vargas Foundation. You have 50 minutes. You may share your screen and begin your presentation. Good morning, Rodrigo. Can you see my screen? Thank you. I would like to thank ICA and Embrapa for this opportunity to participate in this very interesting event. We want this to be didactic and accessible to everybody. Technology allows us to make this available. And I think that this is one of the major achievements that we have achieved in this very difficult time. I am pleased to participate with this group who are joining forces with Professor Paulinelli in his nomination.
Está sendo, né? Hoje temos mais encontro aí às 5 da tarde. Bom, eu fui desafiado, né, pelos organizadores para trabalhar com apenas 2 slides. Então, vocês vão ver aí que esse não conta, tá? Porque esse é a capa. Então, tem esse e mais 2. E eu queria, nessa provocação, a essa constelação de pessoas que virão aí contar casos de sucesso de empresas, de comunicação, de hubs, né, que estão sendo montados, e do próprio governo brasileiro, o Ministério da Agricultura na área de inovação. Eu queria dizer que essa apresentação está baseada aí no nosso livro, que foi lançado agora no final do ano, lá pela editora de Wageningen, na Holanda. O livro esse que está à disposição de vocês, vai estar no site do ICA para baixarem, né? E o PDF também para quem quiser, pode entrar em contato com a gente, está em diversos sites aí. E esse livro, ele é uma leitura...
No, this book can be available on various websites. And in this book, we talk about the next years of tropical agriculture, and I've made a summary here so that I can present it to you in the next few minutes and explain to you the scenario of the macro environment that affects agriculture. So in these drawings that you see here, you will see the traditional production chain of production. So from the primary producer up to the final consumer. John, we see food suppliers, insurers, certifiers, and a number of companies that participate in the whole process in the supply of services, so to ensure that this works well, as well as the flows. You have flows going in both directions, flows of products and the flows of information and payments. And that is the yields and output. So I just wanted to talk to you about the macro environment with interferes with these relationships in the chains for coffee, cellulose, oranges, etc. Everything that is being analyzed, and this is what we in the administration call macro environmental analysis, based on four large major variables in the economic environment, the social-cultural environment, the people's habits and the habits of consumers, as well as the technological environment. And this is a movement that we are experiencing now. It's a time of the three Bs. The three Vs, rather, the variation and variations. Now we have a V, which is in an area which has in which we see an interruption of the world flow of. For example, we have a boat, a ship that has been stranded in the Suez Canal, and this has caused the change in interruption in the change. Of course, we have seen, for example, oil prices that go up and down with no apparent regions. So the people, our panelists here, we'll see that we have a very difficult situation, and we have to see what they will recommend with the variables that go up and down in a very sharp way. So I'm going to just talk about the next slides for 4 minutes. I'm going to talk about the macro environmental changes that interfere with food changes and create opportunities, as you will see in the next presentations. So let us think about the way the consumer thinks. That is, these are the people who are the most important, for whom all of the agricultural sector channels its products. And there are some concerns that have to do with food waste. We have, of course, we also have to think about the youngest people here, social evolutions, collective movements. And here in Sao Paulo, we have seen abrupt growth of initiatives that have arisen with the pandemic. We have initiatives that say buy local, using regional products, helping smallholders. And of course, we see the image of the origin of the countries. It's an old question, but it is gaining much more importance now. When we look at the need for more balanced food, slow food movements, and simplifying food, and giving more options to consumers, more choices. So this is something, for example, the consumers know OPA, which is an interesting case, which shows us the very direct link between the farm and the consumer. The whole question of land use is another major consideration, as Rodrigo already mentioned. The question of climate change and climate-related issues, the whole question of measurement, carbon measurement, and all of this gives us a major opportunity here in Brazil. Those who use the carbon neutral ideal for 2025, so only buy from those companies that they consider are capturing carbon. And I think that is a great opportunity for us, for anyone who is interested in the environmental sector, because this also influences the consumer. We also talk about the other questions for a work communication that was done to respond to the aggressions against tropical agriculture. And we see a greater acceptance. So let us look at the question of coronavirus, for example. We have the question of the increase in sanitizing, in hygiene care, greater knowledge of virology. So the question of security and safety has risen and gained ground in the last few months. We have the consideration, confidence in science and agriculture. We have a more activist approach because we realize that the movements of the families and agriculture and family farming, all of this has gained ground. Appreciation of and having moments with the family, cooking and eating together. These influence elements of a productive chain. If you look at coffee, for example, you might see a shipment that is sent to Geneva. But let us look at the producer here in Brazil. We have to be more and more open. We have to have greater openness in tropical agriculture. 70% of world GDP in 2030 will be from Asian and emerging nation-driven world. We look at I think the Philippines was a major surprise in January and February. The question of demand for output and growth in diet changes. We have to look at the changes due to the pandemic. We have to have greater monitoring and control. The question of transparency. Natural resources, the idea of circular economy and the integration of, for example, sugarcane and maize, so that we should have other questions that did not particularly come with the pandemic, but which have also in their turn transformed the agricultural sector. We have other models such as Uber, the Uber models from the sharing economy, new forms of working, more working at home, for example. We have the question of the home offices. This is a question which is extremely important because I would not, a few years ago, I would not have imagined what has happened in the last 12 months. We have, for example, a company saying that, wondering what is going to happen in the post-pandemic period. We think that we'll have the presence of there will be changes in the productive chain. We have, for example, we have two small producers. All of these sectors will be impacted by the macro-environmental situation. We have the questions of job precarity, new types of protectionism linked to the environmental question, as we have seen, the health risks in food production, industrial units, and all of this that increase the costs for for caring for people who are at the risk of contamination. We also have the question of preventing natural disasters, and all of these are questions that are linked to the climate. Well, I think this is going to be my last slide. We also have an increasing role played by non-governmental organizations that create opportunities or even threats for those people who are involved in tropical agriculture. The question of labor legislation, for example, safety of the environmental legislation and safety. We also have the Brazil's forest code. And then we have the question of tariffs and other questions that are linked to government regulation. I think here again, we have to think of benefiting the meat sector. perhaps the problem arose. Let us thinking about coronavirus, for example. Another question has to do with the restrictions on freedom and individual movements. We have seen that our movements have to be monitored at this point. And we're going to have to accept this to have a safer world, because on one hand, people who are going against the rules are caught. So we have seen major changes in this area. Food safety regulations. I would like to. There is a situation in Brazil with respect to the new policies from the EU, and of course, this has led to a bit of upheaval, because there will be an increase in cost and labor costs. And I'm looking at the regulations and the series of measures and regulations. So we have a world where the public sector is going to impose more regulations. Therefore, it is important that the companies participate more and more actively, and then with other collective organizations, in order to try to create a legal framework, and one that is constantly being updated. Now, with this situation in this digital environment, it's quite absurd what is happening in the digital environment. It is a privilege for me to participate in scientists from various sectors. This has not only to do with the major companies, but also with Brazilian scientists who are setting up their companies and trying to find solutions. And there are wonderful things that are happening despite everything else. The question of genetics. So you have a gene that can be identified in fruits and vegetables, and lots of wonderful things are happening in technology. We have an increasing number of startups, and we see that this is a very major situation in Brazil. The agricultural sector is changing, and everyone wants to collaborate with the agricultural sector and agri-technology. Many interesting things are happening. So to conclude, we also have smart farms. So quite a few years ago, I think when we can identify problems and we can plant specific products. We can have digital farming using the GPS guided equipment. We also have the facial recognition of animals, for example, so we do not have to have markers imposed on these animals. You do not have to take your donkey and have it for weighing. You can use your cell phone, and you can have exact measurements of the size and measurements of the animal. For example, in Israel, for example, there are meat producers, and in other countries. So we have technology with the multiplication of cells. So we have 3D printers that can also reproduce the size of the shrimp. So we have to look at what is going to happen in the 10 years, the next 10 years. There are going to be enormous and surprising changes, which will change the way in which we do business, the way in which we produce our products, the blockchain, for example, and all the things that are happening with robotics. So there is a great deal of changes on the way. So that is the point that I just wanted to make, to open to the panel and to encourage the debate from the rest of the panelists, to say that tropical agriculture is facing major variation of variables, and there will be many variables coming up in the next 10 years, the process of acceleration, which is going to leave many people behind, but will also create new opportunities. I just wanted to just give you the framework with the major items that will be changing, and so that we can think about the opportunities, the coming opportunities. Thank you so much. And I just like to listen to your questions and comments. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Marcus. You have given us a lot of ideas to think about, because something that is of concern to me is that we can't close our eyes to what is happening in terms of innovation in the world. We have digitized producers. We have had and we still have. But who will access this technology? There are significant challenges to the inclusion of small producers, not just in Brazil, but throughout the world. But this is where the value added lies for the future. So we can't close our eyes to new businesses, new ways of producing. It would be a mistake to ignore these. And I liked what you said about local production, local consumption of organic products. Much is being said about regenerative agriculture. There are many new terms. 10 years ago, we were only talking about multifunctionality, but today there are many ways of talking about sustainable agriculture. I think we will have a basket of products that will be subject to innovation and technology that will evolve. And this is the great expectation. There is the aspect of biotechnology as well. For example, one of the vaccines against the coronavirus was tested in Brazil. And so that is what is happening right now. So thank you very much, Marcus. We will continue with the other panelists who will flesh out what Marcus spoke about in more specific terms. So now I would like to invite Dr. Eugenia Saini. She's the executive secretary of Fontagra. She was born in Argentina, is an agronomist, and has a doctorate in agricultural sciences. She has 25 years working in strategic planning and execution of international cooperation in science and innovation, promoting development of agribusiness, sustainable agribusiness. She received a Fulbright scholarship from the University of Cornell, and more recently, another scholarship, Absha Inaman Leadership Academy, a scholarship at the Center for Strategic and International Studies in Washington. You now have 50 minutes, Dr. Saini, for your presentation. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. Thank you for inviting Fontagra to this important event, to the Agri-Trop, and especially this tribute that we are giving to Dr. Alison Paonelli. We want to thank Embrapa and the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation in Agriculture for organizing this international week. And we especially want to say thanks to the other panelists to share with us this presentation and this time. My name is Eugenia. I am the Executive Secretary of Fontagro. Fontagro is the regional fund for agricultural technology that represents 15 countries, 14 from Latin America and the Caribbean and Spain. For us, it's a bit vital to bring countries together to find new knowledge, technologies, and innovation for farmers and for society in general, by fostering interdisciplinary and multicultural innovative research ecosystems. The agri-food system, and especially having working for a long time in the region, our agri-food system has always had the challenge to how we can cope or how we can create new knowledge, technologies, and innovation in a way that we can help food security, and we can help to reduce poverty and making life of people better. Fontagro was created in 1998 as a co-financing or financing mechanism by 15 countries. We also hope that Brazil in the future can join us as well. Even though this program started with a capital of $83 million, it's very interesting how through the last 2 decades, we also invested in 167 innovation platforms that each one is an ecosystem itself. But also we keep our capital and we invest in total $124 million in these ecosystems. For us, it's very important to work with different type of organizations, public and private, because we understand that a real ecosystem needs to bring different type of institutions, different type of scientists and disciplines as well. And also culturally, it's important to keep that diversity, because it's when really the more important knowledge can come through and become an innovation. Last year, in 2020, we defined a new medium-term plan, which was really important for us because it was inclusive in a way that we sum a lot of organizations and we do direct surveys all around 130 people. And in that medium-term plan, we defined our new vision and mission. For us, it's very important as a vision to look forward to transforming the agri-food system through knowledge, to be more inclusive and sustainable with environment and society. And from our mission, we look for leading the regional articulation, cooperation, and dialogue strategy through sustainable co-financing of the public good initiatives. Fontagro create that opportunity to create public good, regional public good in science and development. So we, as a mission, we want to contribute to a better knowledge and innovation for the agri-food system as a whole, and of course, for a better life quality of the people. And that plan, we went through a lot of research, and we finally came up with 3 main strategies that I think they are very, very important and they are very focused. One of them will look inside the farm. The other one is strategy 2, will look outside the farm. And the third, which is a new, will start looking to the consumer and the problems they have, especially with nutrition. I want to just explain a little bit more about each strategy because this is very important. In strategy 1, we understand that we really have a gap in productivity as well as many other subjects. So we create this strategy that we call resilient, sustainable farms in networks, because we believe that we need to create more in-farm solutions. For sure, there are a lot of solutions, but we need to move farmers to start adopting those kind of technologies. The goal is, of course, to increase productivity. We can also start thinking in total factor productivity, which take into account all the resources that we need to produce. But we need to do that in a sustainable way, and we need to be resilient, especially against the impact of the effects that we have from climate change. While trying to increase productivity, it's important also to decrease the greenhouse gases emissions. So first strategy, we are trying to help the ecosystems to give these informed solutions. If we go to strategy 2, what we are trying to do is help these ecosystems to promote a more sustainable productive systems, agroecosystems, but also look to the landscape, to the territory as a whole. In that case, we are trying to support ecosystems that look for not only productivity, but how they can help actors to engage in a better way or a more efficient way and be sustainable through the time. We also look for more bioeconomy concept and project related with the landscape. And third, the more interesting, and I think is the challenge that we also have, is strategy 3, that we name it Food, Nutrition, and Health. And this came especially after the last year from the pandemic, where we realized how important it is to assure that the consumers worldwide will be supplied with the right nutrition. It's not just food, it's not just quantity, it's the quality, it's the vitamin, it's the micronutrients. We deal in different parts of the world with a triple burden, right? So this strategy will help ecosystems that trying to design new technologies, knowledge, and innovations that help to hand in hand get a better source of nutrition, especially from the biodiversity that we have in Latin America, which is really big if we think in this, especially in this tropical region. We have been working, of course, in all Latin American countries and Spain. Even though we are 15 countries, we have reached 33 countries worldwide. We look forward for getting more countries engaged in our ecosystems. We have partnered up in around 500 institutions among public, private, NGOs, and that creates a real network ecosystem that will make sustainable all kinds of networks from science with scientists that we are trying to foster among different countries. Our fourth task, I think we can summarize in this. On one side, we facilitate the dialogue, collaboration, and the cooperation among public and private life science research institutions. We want them to work more frequently. We want to facilitate that network and the way that the scientists can connect each other. At the same time, we promote sustainable co-finance of the science and technology for the agri-food sector in the region. Fontagro is considered as a unique mechanism, sometimes worldwide, because we have our own capital. And this is how we can, through the years, help this ecosystem to be financed and work with other organizations. Of course, we want to also get more engagement with the private sector, which is very important as a whole part of as a main part of the ecosystems. We invest mainly thinking in a multi-stakeholder platforms because those multi-stakeholder platforms are which accelerate or are able to accelerate the innovation or the creation of the public goods that we are looking for. But especially in each ecosystem, what we are trying to do is build capacities, is help the scientists to update their knowledge or getting a new knowledge or even interacting each other. They can create new knowledge that be helpful for a future technology or a future innovation. Fontagro has an extensive work in the tropical region and in the Andean region, tropical and Andean. We went through pasture management, smart livestock system, smart agriculture system, value chain, silvopastoral systems, among many others. If we look at the ASTI statistics, most of the public research and development investment in Latin America is lower than 1%. And this creates a threat, in a way to say, to the national research institution and the academy in our region. And this is why it's important for Fontagro, because we want to help that research programs running through the year, especially in the time when the budget or the investment are lower than other time. I would like to, through all this conversation, of course, mention that for us, it's very important to measure impact in what we do. We have launched last year a publication where we did a first assessment in the economic return from our investment. And in this presentation, you can see that at least in this first initiative that we did with that investment with $8 million, we were able to measure economic return on a $33 million. Of course, each topic, we have different returns. It's not the same to work in pastures, that work in potatoes, that work in any other value chain. But I think this is one activity that we want to do in Fontagro more, which is start measuring more the impact that what we do. And finally, finding ideas. As we all know that agriculture has been and it will be critical for all our economies. We also know that the competitiveness of an economy lies on the capacities for innovation. The solid governance structures and the regional multi-stakeholder innovation platform have been, are, and will be fundamental element for this competitiveness. And the strategic partnership and collaboration we foster are fundamental, not only for increasing investment, but also for strengthening sustainable impact in the region. Thank you very much.
Muito obrigado, Eugenia. A sua apresentação é bastante...
Thank you very much, Eugenia, for that very important presentation, showing how cooperation and the different aspects contribute to the promotion of innovation and show practical implementation in the field. I would like to highlight something you mentioned, resilience. It is important to assist the producers in the market to help them confront the challenges and to help them to overcome the challenges related to harvesting, rainfall. We spoke some weeks ago about irrigation and the different methods of irrigation. And this is an important aspect that will enable producers to be better able to confront the problems and difficulties. An international plan already in the Paris Agreement are aspects that are connected or related to the connection between agriculture and climate change. And there's a lot of focus on carbon. And this we heard throughout the presentation, and resilience specifically through the participation of developing countries who have brought their voice to the international discussion. This is important, And it is important for us to be resilient and have this resilience with regard to innovation. And so the vision that you have shared with us with regard to ecosystems and how to promote them is important, not only in a particular country, but throughout the region. And so your presentation promoted by Embrapa and ICA is extremely important. Thank you very much for your presentation. I'd now like to introduce Italo Guedes, who is a graduate in agronomy from the Federal University of Paraíba with a master's in vegetable production and a doctorate in soils and nutrition of plants from the Federal University of Viçosa. He was vice president of research and development of Embrapa Hortaliças and is chair of the steering committee of the cooperative portfolio of vegetable projects of Embrapa. He plays an important role in urban orchards and urban agriculture and technology. So now I'd like to give him the floor. Hi, Rodrigo. Hello, everybody. I would first of all like to thank ICA and Embrapa for this opportunity to present this new topic, talking about innovation, which is extremely important today. The professor spoke about this and mentioned the fact that agriculture is all-encompassing. This event is also a tribute to Professor Alison Paolinelli. And these are saints in current tropical agriculture and the Green Revolution, which Brazil adopted and developed. So we are going to talk about tropical agriculture in a controlled environment, which is a new system. We've heard about vertical farms. There are some slight differences, but I will demonstrate what this is and what is the importance in Brazil. I asked myself the question, why should agriculture be in a controlled environment when we have so much land? And so I'd like to speak about the production of vegetables. Contrary to other products, the quantity that is produced is not necessarily the most important element. The appearance of vegetables is important for consumers. But I believe that what is important is that most vegetables grown in Brazil and throughout the world are grown in temperate climates. In spite of the adaptation that have been made, seeking improvement, improved conditions, vegetables come under the pressure of climate, dampness, humidity in terms of insects, arthropods, and organisms. And they seem to have a preference for vegetables. So, normally, these are found in South America. This is the case for tomatoes, which originate in the Andes, where there are colder climates. So, as any vegetable producer knows, it's a challenge producing vegetables in Brazil. And we have a winter period that breaks with the cycle of pests and so on, and which affects the quality, the production of quality products, and with the color that consumers are looking for. And in Brazil, we have a diverse climates and different weather conditions. And this is in contrast to other crops. In Brazil, it's a small amount, a million hectares per year, but with the intense use of inputs and irrigation, it is difficult. It is difficult rather to produce vegetables without irrigation, considering climate change and the effects of this. And so it becomes increasingly difficult.
Comuns as perdas de safras de hortaliças.
We know that the climate has changed, and year to year, in the rainy period, and in summer, when we have a lot of rain and high temperatures, this changes the physiological order and aspect of the vegetables. They're darker and so on because of the higher temperatures and the presence of pests and diseases. And the consumption of vegetables, which is relatively low, unfortunately. The recent research on family budgets in Brazil showed, well, outside of the pandemic period, has shown a reduction in the consumption of vegetables. Most of the consumption takes place in urban regions, and the belts, green belts, are centered around urban regions. And it is because of this why 80% of the world population between now and 2050 will be centered around urban areas. And this is a concern, and this has been exacerbated by the pandemic. And there is a strong fear that there will be a lack of supply of fruits and vegetables. And in various parts of the world, the green belts, the producers of greens, the fact that they're closer to cities has to do with vertical farms, the whole concept of vertical farms, where agriculture takes place, with agriculture in the cities. And so there is distance between production centers and consumers. Just to recall that in the proposal of vertical agriculture is one that is urban. It is not an objective of a controlled agriculture. It's not a substitute. It's more of a component. and part of the diversity of agriculture for the future. We have a lot of land. But consumption is low. In Embrapa, we have been working a lot on this area with many universities to increase consumption of vegetables. To achieve this, we need to increase the quantity produced and consumed and link that to the growth of the population that is envisaged by 2050. So when we talk about increase, we're not just talking about quantity, but quality. There needs to be improvement in all the aspects. In our research, vegetables are included, are an important aspect of our research. We need to expand our agricultural areas with in the light of all the conflicts in food producing countries and all the different aspects. The fact of having so much land is a valid point, is an important consideration if we want to produce more. The professor said that today we're not speaking about hectares so much, but square meters. So in controlled agriculture, in controlled environment, we're talking about Z farming, so 0 hectares. And so we are showing that this is an agriculture that will be controlled in most of the environmental variables, because the objective is a technological one. Controlling variables is creating independence from the land and optimizing production. So I see that what is happening is that we are using the land less we have less production of perishable goods, such as vegetables. And of course, there's an increase in extreme events, which not only affect the production of vegetables, but also other crops. And so protected farmlands, the number of protected farmlands has increased, but we have problems with the production and growth of vegetables in terms of winter vegetables, in terms of controlling temperatures. We have a significant problem relating to soils with regard to protected crops. There are no rotation practices that are used, and this increases the problems. And this means that producers adapt main technologies. This is what we call a vertical revolution. And there is a new technique, which is aeroponics, because they provide agronutrients. But not only that, but it saves water and nutrients. We have observed that hydroponics saves up to 75% of the water in a field compared to a similar area, in an open area, up to 95% of water can be saved. There are some advantages to be highlighted. There is a reduction in loss. We know that volatile components contribute to climate change and the emission of greenhouse gases. And this is a big secret, as well as other technologies. Also, artificial illumination, which is used in a complementary way to this type of agriculture, avoiding the entrance or of pests and undesirable organisms. And of course, the consumers will have to pay for the inputs, which are expensive. Just to point out that the land is not flat. We are with the resurgence or the emergence of vertical agriculture and taking advantage of the land and the entrance of flat farming, which is agriculture on flat surfaces. This is agriculture of the future. But I wouldn't say it's the agriculture of the future, it's just different.
Ambiente controlado, certamente, principalmente em zonas urbanas.
And agriculture in a controlled environment, particularly in urban areas. I would like to say that Embrapa has vegetables in a private, grows vegetables in a private enterprise in a controlled environment. And we are trying to adapt to our conditions. So we have carried out a number of experiments. We have done tests for different crops, not only for vegetables, but also for small fruits, to make them profitable. And this is a website with the results that we have seen in Sao Paulo. High quality and nutritional vegetables that are healthy, are ready for use. And this is what we are doing. Thank you very much for the opportunity of presenting this new agriculture, which is being used in many tropical countries.
Especialmente quando você fala que essa não é a
Thank you very much. You have made us think that this is not the agriculture of the future. It is already here. So we cannot close our eyes to this. And now we live in Curitiba, and there is a program from the municipality on organic farming, and this is generating quite a bit of interesting things for production of vegetables within cities. It generates income and jobs and brings food to the table, so many people. I think that this is important when we see what you have just said, that we do not need to have extensive land. We need food and nutrients. we can even have planting in area where we do not necessarily have lots of plants. So from the point of view of access to food, to have these systems to regions which do not have this technology and which do not produce without these technologies, that allow for access to food. Access to food is one of the major points that we have been talking about in SDG 2, not only producing, because of course we can. In Brazil, if we look at tomatoes, for example, tomato that is consumed in the north is produced outside of the north of Brazil, in regions in the center of the country, in Campinas, Sao Paulo. So from a point of view of income generation and job creation and not exporting food to other regions, this has some importance. So I'd like to stress this aspect that allows us to produce technology, create jobs, give access to food to those people who do not have food. And this is the second element of SDG 2, that is nutritional security. This is extremely important. I like to cook and I like to eat, and we can see what I see most is the culture of food. So what was formerly concentrated on beefsteak and the salad with fries, and that was the situation in Brazil before. But if you go to different parts of the country, you can see other products, for example, which we call pequi in Brazil, and other regional products. But
que depende de ter acesso, sem contar do poder de compra, naturalmente, ou de políticas públicas que favoreçam esse acesso, ela depende de eu ter a produção. E eu gosto muito de usar o exemplo da beterraba e da cenoura, porque existem pelo menos 4, 5 tipos de beterraba, e a gente está acostumado só com um tipo de beterraba. E se você comer os 2, 3, 4 tipos, eles são diferentes entre si. O sabor é diferente, mas aí entra o apreciar e o conhecer e o ter o desejo, e para isso tem que estar disponível. Então, eu penso que esse rol de tecnologias que você trouxe, que é o que já está acontecendo, e de novo, a gente não pode fechar os olhos para isso, inclusive do ponto de vista de políticas públicas, é absolutamente relevante, porque senão a gente não consegue evoluir e atender todos os mercados que estão aí, que são mercados
all markets that are present. These are markets, and if there is a demand, there will be supply. So it is very important to have an open view. Thank you very much. And I would like to remind all participants and panelists that we are going to have some time later on. Now we are going to the next presentation. Yes, the sound is off. Let's see if the speaker can unmute his microphone. Thank you. Our speaker has graduated in veterinary medicine. He holds a master's and a PhD in veterinary science at the Rural University of Rio de Janeiro. He has 20 years of experience in executive science, technology, and innovation, agricultural businesses, and now he's the Director of Innovation of the Ministry of Agriculture. We would like to listen to your presentation, Kleber, what you've been working on, the system that you've been working on, and the future of agriculture. Thank you, Rodrigo. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. It is a great pleasure for me to be here with such a renowned team of experts. I would like to thank Manuel Otero, and I would like to make the most of these 15 minutes to talk about perspectives, the evolution of the Brazilian agribusiness. We have an agenda at the Ministry of Agriculture under the leadership of Teresa Cristina, the minister, and I was given the challenge to visualize the perspectives of the innovation of the agricultural sector in Brazil by 2025, which actually is not so far away in time. It is very important to think when we talk about agriculture and food to also focus on horizons of availability. Unfortunately, there is hunger. We cannot ignore it. Another strategic horizon has to do with food security and focus on those aspects in order to provide answers to society. Unless we provide value to society, we will keep on being questioned. So in order to start, I would like to share with you this vision, considering the factors that contribute to these economic curves. Agribusiness no longer has the same classic factors or monetary factors. If we pay attention to this chart, we see that until the end of the 90s, agribusiness was actually effort and work, less than 25%. These indicators have changed, and they have transformed and now account for more than 80% of production. The present and the future, this increase in indicators in agribusiness will not be the same. We will see a change per hectare. However, technology per square meter will be the factor that will make a change. So, as part of this model and as part of this background, we are discussing that we are before a model, and that model has to deal with the things that are coming up. So the future of business will be agro-biodigital. We are working on an agenda, the agenda of innovation for agriculture. It has 5 main pillars to build on. These pillars are associated to issues of sustainability, which is, of course, the core element. It is at the top of discussions. It is at the top of any debate. And when we talk about sustainability, we also talk about decarbonization. We talk about processes of how to use water in a rational manner. We also talk about climate change, of course. So this agenda of innovation must be part and parcel of our perspectives. We need all of these factors to build a central framework for agribusiness in Brazil. The second pillar, strategic pillar, is bioeconomy. We know that today over 80% of the world food is supported by this model. We also have 20% in its territory, 20% of the mega bioeconomic diversity, which is in our region. So we urgently need to build an agenda of diversification, a productive matrix that looks into the present, but also to the future. We need to move on to advanced biology, biosupplies, bioenergy. In this way, we are going to include these elements into other agendas. Biosupplies, which is a key strategy. For instance, last year in Brazil, there were many startups that were able to reposition themselves in the sector. Also, the resources, the natural resources, genetic resources. We have over 42 billion hectares of crop using these biosupplies. So this is an agenda that is going to evolve for Brazil. We also have the agenda of genetic resources that our minister is going to push forward for Brazil. The third pillar is a digital pillar. In addition to the virtual world, we need to push this agenda to transform the Brazilian agribusiness. We are going to build on structures related to robots, new technologies. Connectivity is a priority in terms of digital aspects. Now and the future. And as happens in Brazil, we are always bringing in new technologies related to holographic computing. The fourth pillar, open innovation. We are using a principle of open innovation in order to strengthen the partnerships that we have in the Brazilian agribusiness sector. So much so that we need to connect agribusiness to other segments and productive chains. It is very important to connect to complex aspects so that we can facilitate processes. When we talk about open innovation, it is fundamental to contribute and increasingly promote this environment of innovation. It's very important to look at the movement of agro-techs. These are the agribusiness startups. The presenter's sound is on and off. Okay, so this is open in order to increasingly get farmers closer to the open innovation segments. And the fifth pillar that we need to promote is food tech. I will not stay too long with this because we have Mr. Paolo here, but the logic that we follow at the ministry in particular is related to the fact that there are new processes that we must promote in order to capture the value of the agricultural product based on an agenda linked to the new technologies as well. We need to think about the ingredients, the processes. We also have other agendas that can also be used in order to add value to the food tech segment in Brazil. So this is the perspective, this is the outlook, and these are some of the things that we are working on at present and for the future as well. Following the logic of sustainability, what happened with Embrapa in particular, in relation to the consumption of beef, the first MRD product, which is a classic product of production, which has the neutral carbon certificate, and also connects the agriculture sector through sustainability and through sustainable practices. So there's no point in having a certificate, in having such a new technology, unless we also have a sustainable practice in place. This is the additional value that the agribusiness provides for society in particular. This is a concrete example of how sustainability adds value to consumers. And in terms of bioeconomy, we are amid the green revolution, as you know. We talk about the first wave. This is single crop practices, single disciplines, commodities, synthetic supplies, adaptive research. This is the first wave. But now we are moving into the second wave, integrated systems in Brazil. In 10 or 15 years only, Brazil has been able to move from 5 to 7 million hectares to produce more, to finally get to 16 billion hectares. So we are amid a time of transition. We are moving away from commodity production to include safer food, more secure products, safer products to fuel the production chain. And now we are finally taking the last jump into this third wave. This is the biologic-based agriculture, biological supplies, complex research in this sector. Not only do we produce energy components, but we also produce different aspects related to new fragrances, new ingredients, complex systems. This is very important because this biology-based agriculture is not just a matter of needs, but also a matter of costs. Of course, there is nothing against the sector, but Brazil accounts for 20% of the planet's biodiversity, and we have a huge opportunity to move towards such improvement of our agriculture with biology. When we talk about transition towards sustainability, well, our institutions and our farmers are doing their homework. If we take a look at these statistics according to or under different greenhouse gases agreements, from 2010 to 2018, Brazil was able to reach its targets in 8 years only. We are not talking about 2019 or 2020. We are talking about an optimistic scenario where Brazil was able to meet many of its targets. We do have technology efficiency in order to work harder on our net zero emissions. Now, the third agenda that we take into account when we talk about the digital pillar, it is very important to consider that our production chains and agribusiness sector is not a closed system. So it is very important not only to use 4.0, 5.0, we need to go further and beyond. Society 5.0, the super smart society, this is where we need to go to. The speed that the digital transformation has brought about is huge. We cannot be excluded. We cannot be excluded in our agricultural sector. We have an agenda. We built a digital platform for agriculture. And this platform provides information not only to the internal management processes, but also provide information and provide the necessary tools to society as a whole. We start from the principle that we are working and we are living in an era of open science. We don't know what will happen tomorrow, but what we know is that we need to connect to our stakeholders. We have open data, we have open innovation and open business. So this is important to consider as part of our platform. We also have different theme panels that we are going to work on at the ministry, the Agribusiness Observatory. We also have the ZARC panel. We have the Public Rural Credit panel. These are very specific panels related to co-financing in the rural sector, in the public sector. It's very important that we know where the funds are going in order to keep on promoting investments. We also have these interactive maps. They are very efficient to show how the dynamics of a crop is moving. And also, last year, the minister created the National Tractor Platform. A farmer has a document, has this platform that is for free, and is able to go through the process through this application. 2021 must be the year of rural connectivity in Brazil. This is a target that we want to reach. We want to expand the connectivity in the rural areas, in the farming areas. So in 2 years, we really want to double that connectivity in order to reach 50% of connectivity in the farming areas. And in 4 or 5 years' time, we want to get to 80% connectivity. So this means that if we are going to double that connectivity, we are going to have a great impact. So Marcos, for you like these statistics, so we are going to increase 6.28%. This will be an impact that we are going to have on the gross value of the agricultural sector. This is very important in the central and southern region in particular, and we are going to have an impact in the north and northeastern area too. If we are able to promote this connectivity from 75 to 80% of coverage in the Brazilian territory, then we will be able to contribute 10% to the gross value of the agricultural sector. So I would like to emphasize that if we get to 3 trillion reals, in our expectations are related to 6 billion reals just to have connectivity in the farming areas. We have a new paradigm of innovation. We are really looking forward to pushing the open innovation agenda. We are working with Embrapa very closely. We are working with the agri-tech companies in Brazil. We have a very efficient map that shows the performance of the agri-tech companies. Together with Embrapa, we are going to exceed our expectations. We have over 2,000 startups already in a very short time. This has been very successful. And also, in line with this movement, we are pushing forward many initiatives that we are going to launch soon. This is ILPF Conecta. This is a platform, an initiative that the ministry has promoted to work with farmers and to work with organizations in order to contribute to the sector. This is an example of a startup of 2017, a partnership with Embrapa, actually. And in a very short time, this startup was given funds by two investment funds, and it was able to move over 1 billion reals in the end. And last year, fortunately, and I am very proud of this, Grupo Santander purchased 80% of agri-tech startups at a very good price with values over billions of reals. And that was an example in our country. So why don't we dream of more? Why can't we think that this can also happen with other startups? And when I refer to open innovation, those are the advances. Moving on to food tech, well, Paolo Silvera is an expert in this matter, but our ministry is building a complete agenda with food tech in Brazil, focusing not only on new food types, productive processes too, but also pig farm, vegetal farm, alternative proteins, and other alternatives. So we need to push the agenda forward to include agribusiness into the map. The world is dynamic, as you know, and we have this vision for the future, but we also know that we need to build a successful branding for the Brazilian agribusiness sector. Considering the sustainability of the agribusiness these days, we aspire to keep on building something like green for life. So I will stop now, and I would like to thank you for your attention. Thank you very much, Kleber. Thank you for your presentation.
Se a gente somar aí mais ou menos o que a gente tem de vegetação nativa.
Thank you very much, Kleber. I think if we look at the vegetation we have, good practices, and what we have achieved in agriculture, we can see that in 10 years, we will have made a lot of progress if we have an open mind and an open vision in the scenario that we currently have. I think we will be able to move forward with more dynamism. If we don't retain this focus, then we won't be able to progress. So we need to have new products, new business, promote the small farmer, and make it a business so that they can really earn money, so that they can generate employment and improve the economy of their region. And at the end of the day, this is how we will be able to have access to other types of food of greater quality. And we can think about niche markets and personal preferences.
Uma empresa de Jaú que está produzindo limão caviar, que parece pepino pequeno.
I bought some caviar lemon the other day, originating from Australia. And it's really expensive. But it was interesting with the leaders of sustainability. But we need to consider bringing some balance to the final price to the consumer.
When we talk about diversification of production with technology, innovation, and the necessary assistance for you to have a product, food product on your plate. With those who want to talk about sustainable production, it is very easy to have a slogan, talk about green revolution as something that is harmful. And now we're going to create a new type of revolution, a regenerative revolution, as if we could stop everything and redo things. What I think is that it is a very an ideal which is quite realistic. I have data in economic information, and I think that we have to continue to be vigilant as to what is happening. And I think that these panelists have made great mention of this. It is very important to see that the ministry is looking at all of the questions and the ins and outs to deal with innovation from all channels possible, through the Internet of Things, on the databases, to do all of this for the benefit of the various productive sectors. So it was very easy, very informative to listen to what you had to say. And now we're going to deal with connected with other people with various areas of interest. And now we have Paolo Silvera from Foodtech Hub. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about Paolo before I give him the floor. He's a food engineer. He has a master's in administration from the Getulio Vargas Foundation. He is an advisor to several business groups, and he has a long career as a CEO of many companies. He is presently CEO of Foodtech Brazil, a company that has helped companies to identify relevant sources of information, support, and partnerships in the food chain. Thank you so much. First of all, to my colleagues, I'd just like to say that this is a great source of satisfaction for me to be here in this tribute to Alison Paulinella, because all of us who know him know how important a figure he is. I was just going into Unicamp when he was at the Ministry of Agriculture, and this is a well-deserved tribute, and I'd like to I've signed onto this list that is being proposed. I have also worked in Embrapa when I left the University of Rio de Janeiro, and the Ministry of Agriculture, and all of those who are involved in the project. I also worked as the president of Nisca Williams for Latin America, and innovation has always been part of my life, because the Danes have always had a great deal of innovation, and this idea of thinking, a rethinking of innovating, has always accompanied me throughout my career. Now, Foodtech Hub is a company for innovation in the food chain in order to add value to food. We need food for life, and this is a new trend that the consumer is following, to see food and consumption of food as a means of physical and mental well-being. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what I have done so far. And with the 10 minutes that Rodolfo has given me, I'd just like to tell you that this hub, the idea of the food hub, is to group together, to select and capture and model technologies, food technologies, in certain sectors. For example, productive systems. We worked for 2.5 years to build these and to group together these virtual stakeholders. And now we're thinking about the physical structure. So we hope that for the next year, by next year, we'll have something physical, because we need to have a hub, a end user, end product for foods. We need to have a laboratory, a plant, a different type of structure. And then another pillar of facilitating technological innovation to create sustainable models, not only in a circular system where we consider that this is just part of accessibility. Everything is part of our science. This system is a system that we examined when we started to think about building. When I met somebody with whom we studied many models for the stakeholders. Who are the stakeholders? Universities, industries, governors, entrepreneurs, and the Foodtech Hub has the ambition of bringing together all of this ecosystem. We have parallel interests, and we need to have smart packages, either for transport, at the point of consumption, etc. This is something that we have to discuss more in Brazil. And we now have a configuration. We also have ambitious targets as far as these packages are concerned. And we need to go into greater detail with these, to work hard with this. We are looking at this channel, as Kleber mentioned. The university here in Brazil, and here I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this. So the University the university, together with the Ministry of Agriculture, has been setting up a set of ingredients and alternative proteins, because we do have products. We have technologies, of course, but we can use these technologies for our own Brazilian products, and so that we can have healthier food. We can either have a process of adding value, because sometimes we say we export coffee, but we import espresso coffee. So we have to think about new technologies, new means, as we did last week in the LaTeX Expo. One of the categories that we had was 76 food techs. Last year we had 40. This year we had 100, and this year we had 76 rather. So the new technologies try to have a cleaner process, technologies with using biomass. For example, in Brazil, we'll have a large source of biomass. I'm just going to name the connection with that we have with startups, Israeli startups. So Better Juice, that is orange juice with less sugar, and we need to have this juice. We have to give texture in the mouth when we drink it. In Brazil, we already have companies that are trying out this product. So the orange juice byproduct can, instead of being used for animal food, can also be used for human food, for consumption. So food waste, which is wastage of food. And with respect to this, we have been discussing the quite number of food wastage. We are going to try to have startups in different categories in food, in storage, transport, among others. And we see that in some categories, such as hortifood, we have tomatoes, melons, potatoes. We want to have a discussion on the wastage of food. Now, this is another point of the chain, and we have programs for this as well. Now, food security. This is an issue which we have to discuss, and which is one which is very important. The food industry is an industry that suffers from the skepticism of some people, but food security really has to go through the channel of the food industry. Sometimes all we have is processed food, but this does not mean that it's not healthy. So what we're seeing here is what we have done in Brazil, how we bring together the major research institutes. For example, I took a sample and we see that you'll not believe the number of very good work that is being produced, that needs to be disseminated, and that has to come out of the research centers. Last week in our event, we saw an interesting expression, that is farm to fork. What we have to do is to free and liberate this information, to ensure that this information goes to the production and to the industry. With doing this, we can connect the systems, and that is the overall vision that I had, to ensure that we had access to information. First, we have the Food Valley, which is part of my group, my advisor group. Of course, we had Foodtech. We had also partnership with VRS, and it was interesting last week to see how Gary Werner said that when I'm talking about the companies who produce proteins. I spoke with all the protein companies, but we decided to go along with RFV. So everybody's linked to the whole question of the demand of the consumer. The new proteins that are being developed have to do with this new demand. There are other companies that deal with processing of food. We have Inoprop, which deals with plant proteins. We have Likey Food, which has 14 ecosystems in Europe. We have the farm to fork strategy, and we're just getting to know this and interacting with it. We also have Frank Hofer from Germany, which is a very strong partner. We have Foodtech Hub, of course, which is connecting with a model that is called Ecosystem Navigator, and that is of 5 global research hubs, which is based in the United States, but is also Europe and Asia and New Zealand. So we have set up a navigator ecosystem so that we can exchange information, to use these synergies, to do joint projects, always with the objective of bringing about innovation. As far as the major organizations, industrial organizations are ABIA, ABIR, ABRE, and ABIAM. We have it, and among others, we have a membership system for the use of technology. We have companies such as Bayer, for example, which participate formally and help us to model this ecosystem. You can see all of this here. And to conclude, we see Latin America. We are going to have a food tech. We're looking at Latin America. We are going to have a food tech hub. We're going to put a food tech in Mexico and one in Argentina, perhaps by the end of this year. But we'd like to use this information for Latin America in general, so that we can disseminate all of this knowledge and information equally, and so that everyone can participate. Well, this is what I had to say to you. I'd just like to thank you all. I'd like to especially thank Kleber, when we talk about the ecosystem. I spoke with him in Brazil, in Embrapa. I spoke to him and he helped me very much, and I'd like to thank him warmly for this.
Thank you very much, Paolo. You have contributed an important aspect to our conversation, our discussion. Taking all of this into account, I would quickly move on to introducing our next speaker, who is going to make an interesting contribution to our discussion. Camila is a rural producer, an entrepreneur, communicator, and defender of Brazilian agriculture. She was trained in public relations with a specialization in strategic marketing, and her videos on social networks have had more than 1 million views, at reaching persons even outside of the sector. Can you hear me well, says the speaker? Yes. Listening to these lessons that we have been receiving, it's an honor for me to be here and to give you a summary of what has been done. Communication is what I am involved in on a daily basis. The pride of tropical agriculture, which and Brazil is proud also of Alison Paulinelli. I had the honor of doing a live session with him. It was like a class. And he certainly is worthy of all the recognition that he has received, and he's leaving a legacy behind for us. Communication is important for agriculture. It is the neck of the bottle. It is an important aspect of our agriculture. And for those who are linked to the challenge of communicating within the sector. So we are in an area where a lot of information is available to people. They take what is coherent and what is relevant to their conditions. There are people who don't know very much about our sector. I do have more than 1 million followers on social networks. There are some who have a mistaken view, mistaken ideas, and have received false information. And so we're creating content to combat this. We have a lot of information, data that we have to share. So this is where I act on social media. I believe that this new generation has taken on social network. This is for a younger generation and who can be influenced in a negative way. If we want to have a new generation who will be following Paulinelli and all of you here, and for tropical agriculture to be world standard, to be known worldwide. Sustainability has not been associated with agriculture. And so there's information out there that is not correct. And so our job is to demystify these things. The society can be within reach of agriculture and cattle rearing. And so we have more demanding customers, as the professor said, and so we find ourselves having customers who are more demanding and who have preconceived ideas, who know what they want, and want to know where the products are produced and so on, who desire transparency. And so it is important for us to deal with this. I was a rural producer before becoming a communicator. And sometimes this is a source of controversy on social networks. Here, I produce hydroponics. And this question of the farm for the final producer, and I listened to everything that was said here. And because it tells us a bit more about production and the importance of rural producers, the link between rural and urban farming. There are organic as well as conventional farmers. I am upfront and I say that this has been produced by persons who know what they're doing. And but what is important is to provide an answer, a response to consumers. Very often, some producers have an idea or think that they're superior. But we need to humanize what we do. And it is true that we have enormous challenges. But there were sectors that were affected by the pandemic and who have managed to be renewed, and there are innovations and technologies that can help us. So we need to conserve our image and the image of what we do on social networks. We're going to connect knowledge. We have insights on data, information, knowledge, insights, and we're going to link all these different points. Wisdom. Some people understand what they want and communicate it in the same way. We work with research, and I would like to insist on the fact that we need to talk with persons who are mistaken about the sector. We need to communicate for a public, an audience that doesn't have access, but who are interested in knowing more about agriculture. I believe that we need to achieve this challenge, moving towards other audiences, not just those who are directly linked to agriculture. Of course, we're all linked because we consume, but there's research, innovations, data, and knowledge out there, and we need to communicate that to others, but also among ourselves. So I would like for everybody who speaks badly about agriculture to gain more knowledge. Visit Embrapa, see what they're doing in technology and innovation. People need to understand this. It's not just a question of planting something and selling. We need to change that view. When we talk about family agriculture, small and medium-sized farmers, I try to emphasize this. It's not the size that matters. The small farmer, the medium-sized, and the large farmers are all important. Some produce commodities, others produce food that we consume on a daily basis, but they're all important to the chain. We talk about the future of agriculture, future agriculture. We talk about this unicorn, so to speak, in inverted commas, and their models on YouTube that we see. And you know better than anybody else that Brazil is already in the future. Brazil is already in the future compared to other countries. When I saw Macron that he wasn't going to import soya from Brazil because of the problem with the Amazon, I was surprised because many Brazilians have shared that knowledge. So they're going to invest millions of euros in seeds and so on. But Brazil has been doing that for quite some time. And we have well-known researchers who have been doing this for some time. So we are the future, and there's no ideal model. We have several ways of producing, and these are things that we need to establish. Some people say the sector is like this, the sector is like that. We need to come together, though. For example, some talk about meat produced in laboratories or plant-based, plant-based meat or proteins. We shouldn't be talking about different markets. In the supermarket, we have a lot of options more. When the plant-based or the vegetarian hamburgers have their buyers, and then but the fact that we have this diversity doesn't mean that agriculture has come to an end. We are in full development and evolution. So this is why I am provoking and stirring this new generation on social networks to understand what's happening now. Thinking of the time, what is important is unity. We need to teach Brazilians and everybody that we are not a problem. We are part of a solution. And so I'd like to thank you all for the lessons I've learned today. I think that if we strengthen ourselves and unite, we will be able to move forward in the field of agriculture in Brazil. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, says Rodrigo? Yes, we're hearing you. Camila, are you hearing us, Camila? Camila, are you not hearing me? Camila, can you hear me? Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Camila. I believe that what you have said is very relevant for us. Communication is always a problem. Especially communicating to those who don't understand us or who don't like us is difficult. Just remember the carbonized coffee that we drink. What's behind things? If we think about the role of agriculture, the whole issue surrounding the Amazon, the consumers consume what we produce. And when we look at genetically, the discussion we hear around genetically modified organisms is really absurd. And so it is important for us to communicate information that is true. And so it is important for us to focus on that, on communication. We've come to the end of the presentations, and we have about 20 minutes or so for discussion, questions and answers. I'm going to read the questions that have been posed. The first question is for Kleber. There is no room to dissociate food production from technology. How do you place the small farmer in this context? I think we've received the reply. There's no doubt that they're indissociable, independent of whether the producer is small or big. This has to do with scales, but innovation is relevant for everyone. We have small coffee producers in the sul de Minas, which adds value or which has added value. One of the main aspects or programs of the Ministry of Agriculture is to promote small farmers. And so our minister is leading in the Northeast program. And the idea is to bring innovation, technology, and science to improve small farmers who are most needy of having access to productive chains. Thank you, Kleber. The second question what is the greatest problem connected to verticality of agriculture, which is directed to Italo? The main problem in Brazil is the lack of technology, which is at the heart of the problem, the project that I mentioned, and there are other projects that we are working on with Professor Simone of Isalke, there are other research groups who are working on this. And we need specific legislation governing this. A lot of the technology has been imported. But for example, we are in contact with two companies that are automatizing their work, and this is expensive. A lot of the technological tools that we have are imported. And when we think about the devaluation of our currency, this has a lot of this has an impact on spending on importing these technologies. So we need to, there are people who provide or who are involved in the production of soya and other products. We have partners involved in vegetable farming, but who do not have access to phytosanitary measures. They cannot sell their products that are fit for use or consumption. They have to be hygienic. And so questions arise, new issues have arisen. And I believe that these will be solved over time. Of course, we need technology. We need to improve the technology.
Thank you very much. And now we have a question for Marcus. Marcus, what would be the situation for a small producer in an agricultural system where the incentives are just starting up? So perhaps you spoke along these lines, but perhaps you can go in greater depth on how technological innovation in agriculture with so much technology, how do you think it is, how would it be to have people have basic natures, basic ideas of agronomy? How can they manipulate and how can they go understand all of these new technologies? I'm going to say that a smallholder, or the main way would be through partnerships and cooperatives in order to incorporate these new technologies. I think that working through cooperatives is one of the most rapidly growing areas. So I see that cooperatives and partnerships must play a preponderant role in giving incentive to small producers, smallholders. We also need the students in this demand that their teachers modernize the curriculums in agronomy, because we have to look at all of the new innovations that are taking place. Thank you so much, Marcos. I'm now going to give two questions to Eugenia. And the first one is from Beatriz Ivoro, and it says she would like to understand whether it is possible to invest in startups on food products, and how is it possible to have more financing to help researchers carry out research on this? Well, I'm going to speak in Spanish. Fontagro has initiatives and we have ecosystems. We have regional projects in various countries with various organizations, public and private as well. And they're working on various areas that are critical for agriculture: water management, soil management, management of diseases, rapid alert systems, just to mention a few. And what we have to do is to apply to the financing mechanisms that have a convening effect. We know that there's an open call. It will be closed on the 9th of April. But it's important to note that we have platform, an ecosystem. It is not for individual countries, but actually groups of countries. In fact, they have groups of institutions that are working with, for example, we could have an entrepreneur coming from Europe, working together with somebody else from Uruguay, from Colombia. So we have to have the key pillars, that is research agencies, that would be agricultural research agency of a given country, but they also have to have the associations of farmers and all of those who are involved in the very heart of the business, in the very heart of the agricultural ecosystem. With respect to Brazil, Brazil is not currently a member of Fontagro, so cannot give direct funding to platforms. Fontagro cannot give direct funding, but if Brazil participates, or different organizations within Brazil participate as partners or associates, they can, this will imply that they will use their own funding. So as an executive secretary, what I try to ensure is that Brazil should become a member of Fontagro. And I know that there's going to be critical scenario, and this has always been the case all the years that I've been working in agriculture. But what we're trying to do is to ensure that Brazil will be a new member of Fontagro, because I think this will be very timely and opportune because of the situation that is happening in Brazil, in Latin America, and the world in general. And of course, we have a representative Brazil in our organization. We know that's one of the most enterprising. And of course, we have work that is ongoing in platforms and has been going on for many years. Thank you so much for this question. And it's important for me to reinforce the need that we have of ensuring that Brazil will become a member of Fontagro. Thank you. Thank you very much, Eugenia. I'm now going to give a question from Verena Mins to Paolo Silvera, and she says that she has, with respect to meat and derivatives of meat, what are the consequences for these productive chains? Thank you very much, first of all, for this question. We do already have some initiatives underway. We have worked with a French startup, which has worked with more than 20 clients in a blockchain. But in Brazil, in the University of Santa Maria, there is a very interesting initiative which is also underway, which works with this Foodtech chain. Of course, the blockchains have a strong input in many chains. Thank you very much, Paolo. I just like to make use of your reply just to note the very important role that traceability has in our discussion, because this will lead, it's very important for the consumers, and it is also very important for international trade. In Brazil, we have a history of traceability, and this goes back to more than 2 decades. And I think that there are so many new things happening. We have to ensure that we have traceability. We have to ensure that through traceability, we can get information, information on food security, and there's a whole universe of transparency and information. I think that is extremely relevant. So now, Camilla, there is a question which is rather long, that is contact relationship between urban farmers and rural farmers is less and less and weaker, because many people do not recognize the suffering, the difficulties of the farmers. Mechanization has changed agriculture, the part of society, sees these innovations as negative rather as a means of progress. What can we do to ensure that the society will have the necessary information of the challenges suffered by the farmers and food producers, and to understand that innovations are necessary to ensure that consumers receive the food? First of all, I must say that this is a challenge that I'm always trying to find the reply to, because this is just one of the many challenges. This is something we ask ourselves every day. How do we do this? How do we give more information to the end user, the final consumer, on what we as farmers do, how we as farmers do? And as a communicator, I think that as far as physical considerations are concerned, it is quite easy because we are just a few minutes from the city, but we have to explain what happens with the harvest. And since 2017, before the pandemic, I've been trying to go into people's houses, have my information reaching people in their homes. Sometimes I distribute little leaflets to explain how a given product was produced. And sometimes we go to schools and universities, and we always try to communicate with the students, with young students who want to learn. And I think that this is important. Some options that I also have presented to people who invite them to come to our farms, come to harvest your own vegetables. We give them classes, cooking classes. We invite chefs. We make picnics for the children. And this is one of the ways in which we have found to explain to people how it works. And I always tell people, we have to humanize agriculture. We have to give it a human face, because we often see photos of beautiful tractors on a sunny day with all of the plants. But they need to look at the hard part of agriculture, the hard side of agriculture, so that they can see real people, not farmers looking in the perfect advertisements. We have to look at the very difficult sides. We have to look at the dirty boots, and we have to look at what is happening on the day-to-day. And this is essentially what people have to understand. People will say, okay, I've never really valued the eggs so much. And we have to look at the food that we eat day to day and look at it in a new way. So when you go to get eggs, when you understand that it will take a long time for the eggs to reach, a perfect egg to reach the consumer, this helps to demystify things. We have to simply show the difficulties. We have to show and teach people what we do on a day-to-day basis and put it in a humanized form. Thank you very much. Camila?
Thank you, Camila. I have a question from Vanderson that's very related. Camila, the same social networks also distort the image of the sector and the fact that we're not benefiting from production. All of us who are defending agriculture, we need to learn more about social networks. Yes, I think it's a tool that is available for everyone. Why not allow those who speak well of agriculture to speak across these networks? advertisements show images or give the image that they wish. So we need to use what we have. There's a problem with the connection, says the interpreter. We have to show people what is really happening. So our generation needs to be able to manage all of this and manipulate all of this. So we need to use those tools to help them to understand agriculture. Yes, it is important to understand the reality of the sector. Understanding the state of physical geography is important. First, to better understand what we're talking about. Well, we're coming to the end of our session. First of all, I'd like to thank all of you. I think it is
de não ter inovação na veia, como a conexão
to talk about all that Alison Paolinelli has done. And I think that trying to reach different people with different tastes and all of this is important and will add value. Producing in a small area will depend on the producer and the market for those products. We need to know how to work, this land. We have seen the role of innovation. We've heard about this and the importance of tropical agriculture. For example, in Brazil, this is something we experience on a daily basis. How we overcome the challenges facing us, facing our society. And so I would like to call on the president of Embrapa to make some final remarks. I would like to thank you all for your presence here. But if you could just stay with us a little longer for these closing remarks from the representative from Embrapa, Elaine. I will just take 5 minutes. Oh, we have 2 persons. So if we could just wait for a while, 2 persons who need to come into the room.
Ok, já verifiquei que o Dr. Gui entrou na sala, né? Dr. Roberto também. Perfeito. Vamos
So I
começar.
see that Roberta is here with us.
Senhoras e senhores, boa tarde.
We're waiting for Dr. Gabriel.
Nesses últimos dias,
Good afternoon. Throughout these last few days, Embrapa and the Inter-American Institution on Cooperation in Agriculture has promoted this International Week on Tropical Agriculture to discuss the model, the tropical agricultural model, and bring content together, content on the table ahead of the United Nations Food Summit. We've had the participation of AGRA, Biodiversity International, SIAT. We've had Katye, the Tropical Agricultural Research and Higher Education Center. We've had CIRAD, the National Agriculture School, Luis de Queiroz of the University of Sao Paulo, Fontagro, Regional Fund for Agricultural Technology in Latin America and Spain. Foodtech Hub, Brazil, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, the University of Gabianga of Kenya, and University Galanga of the Netherlands. We have the director of Embrapa, we have Mr. Guy de Capdeville, we have Mr. Rodriguez, the agribusiness coordinator at VGV, and Mr. Delgado. So to start, we're going to invite the agribusiness coordinator, Mr. Roberto Rodriguez, to take the floor. Good. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. It's an honor for me to participate in the closing session of this week. From what we've seen of the event, it gave a clear view of where we're heading in the world in the area of food security and sustainability. These are two topics that are related to agriculture and in particular tropical agriculture. When we talk about sustainability, we're talking about bringing strengths together, various strengths, technology, science, and strategies as well. Both topics, technology and strategies, are important to the organizations who have organized this event, ICA and Embrapa. Those two topics are important and important for us to develop in an appropriate way that has spoken to issues under the teaching and leadership of Alison Paolinelli, who has introduced appropriate strategies to ensure food security for peoples of the entire world, in Africa, in the Americas, and in Asia as well. And so it is with great satisfaction that we bring this event to an end, and I would like to thank Professor Paolinelli for his leadership and inspiration. I would like to thank Embrapa for organizing this event. As I'd like to thank the Director General of Embrapa, represented by several colleagues, I'd also like to thank all the panelists who have spoken with brilliance and technical competence and who have drawn our attention to the future of the world through tropical agriculture. I'd like to thank and acknowledge all the participants who have followed us these 5 days. I'd like to thank the interpreters as well, without whom this event would not have been the same, would not have been carried out with as much brilliance. I'd like to thank Embrapa IICA and all of those who have been present at this event. Have a wonderful weekend and see you next time. Thank you very much, Dr. Roberta Rodriguez. I would like to remind you that those who registered for this week will receive certificates by email. Now we'd like to invite the representative of ICA in Brazil to speak, Delgado Gabriel. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you all and all those who are following us, this wonderful event. On behalf of the Director General, Manuel Otero, I'd like to thank all the panelists and all the participants, all who have participated in this wonderful event on tropical agriculture, and who have recognized the lifelong work of Alison Paolinelli, and also to chart the agenda for the future for tropical agriculture so that it guides us and so that it feeds into our reflections, our decisions and discussions. Because I believe that this is not only important for the regional discussion, but also at world level. I think these have been high-level, important discussions which help us to think, or it makes us think that this is only the beginning of a series of events that will place tropical agriculture on the agenda. I think it is important because Brazil has been important for the development of tropical agriculture for a great part of the world. I'd also like to thank Celso Moretti, who from day one, when we spoke about this event, who have been very disciplined, professional, and structured in terms of organizing this important event. And special thanks also to Rodolfo, Daldegan, who has been responsible for communication, connections in various languages, and who has worked with a high level of professionalism, and who is taking his first steps in agricultural policy. So thank you very much, Rodolfo, for all the work that you have done and for the team that have helped to organize this event. I'd like to recognize Embrapa and the Ministry of Agriculture through Christina, and Embrapa through Celsa have put together a panel of impressive panelists. They have changed the vision of agriculture, and there has been a volume of technical aspects that came together during this week. So thank you very much for the entire team that has really done a considerable job. Roberta, I know that you have put a lot of energy into the organization of this event along with Manuel Otero. And I would like to encourage us to continue to improve and add to these discussions that will lead to the development of not only Brazil and not only tropical agriculture here, but throughout the world. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Delegada Gabriel. I'd like to give the floor to Mr. Guy Capdeville.
Boa tarde, Dr. Roberto, parceirão.
Thank you so much, Elaine. Thank you so much, Dr. Roberto. You are such a wonderful friend. Well, we managed to pull off this event, and so proud of you and our very dear Manuel Otero. And it was organized in such a short time, and it's such an impactful event. I'm so surprised that my expectations were surpassed, the quality of the discussions of the panelists. And I just like to say and assure you, Mr. Rodriguez, of the pride that I feel, and listening to Camilla, it's very important because she is young, but she represents a youth that is far more mature than our generation. These are people who come with substance and vision. So Camilla, you can always depend on Embrapa to help you to demystify all these accusations that talk about lack of sustainability, inadequate use of land. That is not true. That story is not true. We have this figures to show it. And we're proud of having organized this event so in such a successful way with such very interesting content. And here we have the challenge. Dr. Roberto and Dr. Manuel, we have to make this a periodic event. So not annual, but from time to time, so that we can go back to this, we can meet again, because this alliance between ICA and Embrapa has existed for a long time and will always continue. So I must say that I'm extremely happy with the work, which has far-reaching repercussions. And one thing that I am really happy about is that the man who started all of this transformation that we're seeing is Minister Alison Paulinelli. Also, Dr. Roberto, your contribution has been very important in the past as well. So, but now the tribute is addressed to Dr. Paulinelli, because he has ensured that agriculture be developed on the basis of science and technology. And this has opened the way for Brazil to ensure food security. And now we can talk about Brazil as a country that has sustainable agriculture. And Brazil has a lot to offer to our partners, with which we would like to have closer relations with neighboring countries. And here in South America, we want to have a very strong team, not only in Brazil. We also have to make sure that it's effective so that we can work together with the world population. We are going to solve the problems, which are very large, very great problems, but we know that we have the conditions, we have the possibility to confront these and to ensure social and economic strengthening for our populations and ensuring sustainability. Congratulations to ICA and Embrapa. I'd like to congratulate Fernando and Laine. Congratulate everyone from Embrapa, my friend Rodolfo. The work this week was very well organized. I'd like to thank all of the members of ICA, all my greetings also to Dr. Mark and all the other members of the panel who also helped us in this organization. It is a great pleasure to listen to Dr. Marcos. His competence and his vision are invaluable. Thank you so much, and congratulations to Eagle. So let us go forward, and I hope that we can repeat this event. A big hug to all of you. Thank you. So thank you very much, Director. So at this point, we'll be closing the ceremony. Thank you very much for your participation, and thank you, these proposals for sustainability, thank you for the constructive exchange of dialogue, of ideas, and the ongoing dialogue with many actors. And thank you very much. Good afternoon and excellent weekend to all. Goodbye.